I thought I'd start off today with a short story. I was driving to work a couple of weeks ago, early in the morning. And as Rod said, I live in Colorado, and we have a lot of people moving to Colorado. If they're not moving here to Nashville, it seems like they're moving to Colorado. It's a nice place. We got a lot of mountains, 300 days of sunshine a year, lots of brew pubs, and supposedly, legal weed. So I don't know what's going on here, but a lot of people moving to Colorado. So I had to get to work early to miss some of the traffic. And I was listening to some teaching on my radio. And it was about a book that's very old. It's over 3,000 years old. And there's a saying in this book that goes like this, and you might have heard it before. It says, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Has anybody ever heard that? A couple of people have here. Okay, good. So the teaching was not only on this book, but also this saying. And you have to get in and understand really what that means, the word. And some people know what vain is. Some people, relate that to pride and whatnot. But if you go back to the original language, this was written in 3,000 years ago. Vanity means breath, vapor, or fleeting whiff of air. And so immediately when I heard that, I was like, hey, I got to use this here at the compressed air best practices. But when you package that all together, that saying, it means that which is frustrating, temporary, or perplexing. So here we go. We got all those words together, plus it means air or a whiff of air. So anyhow, I thought that was a good lead in here to the presentation. Okay, well, let's get into the real stuff here. So a quick overview. We'll just give you a brief introduction of who I am and who Ball is, and then we'll get into the meat of the presentation of why do you want to benchmark compressed air, and can you standardize a compressed air? And this is a bit of a journey that myself as well as Ball has been on here for the last 6 months or so, not only just for North America, but across the entire world. And even if you're sitting here in the audience and you have just one facility and one compressed air system, I think there's some stuff in here that you can take back with you. So a little bit about Ball. We're a pretty old company, relatively speaking, 139 years old. A lot of people have heard of Ball before because they think of glass, so the Ball canning jar. And that was certainly a case of the business for a long time, but we've been out of that, and now one of our largest business is making aluminum beverage cans. So we make a lot of cans, as you can see. There are over 100 billion a year all across the world, of which over 50 billion we make here in North America. So live the can life. Use aluminum cans. Don't use plastic. Don't use glass. Sorry, the glass and the plastic guys here in the room. But truly, aluminum beverage cans are very good for the environment. And part of it is because you can recycle them forever. Okay, don't lose the aluminum, just keep recycling them. Okay, so a big plug for the aluminum beverage can. One thing I want to emphasize is that Ball, for a long time, and especially now, certainly has been focused on sustainability. We have a carbon goal that's science-based. It's published. You can see more about our goals on our website. And if you know about science, science doesn't stay still. So we had a science-based goal based on the science from previous years. And now I hear the science is changing. So we're going to have to revise that goal and actually get even more aggressive. So stay tuned for that. The tie-in here, though, is that either fortunately, if you're in the compressed air business and selling equipment, or for me, I'm the energy guy, we use a lot of compressed air. Okay, and so because compressed air is used, inherently, it takes a lot of electric, and it's kind of a wasteful thing depending on how it's used. So anyhow, that leads into why we wanted to go ahead and do better. A little bit about myself. I've been at Ball for almost 21 years. I wasn't originally an energy manager type guy like a lot of people. My background was an environmental professional. And about 14 years ago, if you recall that graph we saw yesterday, there was a huge spike in natural gas prices in 2005 with Hurricane Katrina. And that got a lot of people's attention because they weren't planning on energy prices doubling. And because of that, we decided that it was time to focus on energy. And so I don't know, I got the call and been doing it ever since. So that's a little bit about myself. I will say this, no one's born out of the womb being an energy manager, so you got to start somewhere. And I do want to give some credit where credit's due, and that is, as you heard yesterday and today, there is just a ton of resources out there on the federal and local level to learn about energy management. So I want to say a special thanks to the EPA Energy Star program, the DOE Better Plants program, which we participate with, as well as obviously compressed air best practices. I can't emphasize enough how fortunate we are to have this occasion to be together, to learn from each other, to hear from national experts in these fields of practice, as well as the vendors upstairs. I mean, you just can't beat it. So thank you very much. So why would we be interested in benchmarking and standardizing compressed air? Here's some reasons. Compressed air is expensive. I think you guys understand that. We use a lot of it. There's complexity to it. There's a lot of different ways to make compressed air, as you might know. Tons of different types of machinery and technology, and it's a lot more than just making the compressed air. You got to treat it, you got to transport it, you apply it and use it, and so forth. Plus, the technology is changing. Okay, things are a lot different today than they were 15 years ago, or certainly 25 years ago, and frankly, let's hope it continues to change. Another thing too about benchmarking is that, not only within North America or even within the company or even globally, there's a lot of different perspectives on compressed air, okay? So if you're the guy very at a high level, you probably don't know a lot about energy efficiency or whatever, but you do know that when you're buying new equipment, it costs money, okay? And so at a very top level, it seems like those guys are always concerned about how much capital they're spending, okay? And are you gonna spend money to get something that's an expensive solution, or are you gonna spend money to get a cheaper solution, okay? Everybody's probably been there and experienced that, and certainly I have been too. And these are dynamics that you need to manage and take in consideration. As well as, let's say you're the person at the plant level. Maybe they have a great relationship with a particular vendor or supplier that's been backing them up for a long time. How do you balance all those type of constraints as well as aspects of the decision making? The other thing too is if you work for a larger company, do you really understand what you even have across your portfolio? Okay, we have over 20 plants in North America and 60 across the world. I generally know what we have in our plants, but you'd be amazed we didn't have it written down in one central area as far as these are all the pieces of equipment that we have, these are the age, the make, the models. This is all the performance data that I have from over the years. We didn't have that centralized. Maybe we did a project back in 1990, and obviously at the time we had an arrow for a centrifugal air compressor, but what happened to that arrow? Does anybody even have it anymore? Is it stuck in a file drawer? So we didn't have this type of stuff centralized. The other thing here that's a driver is cost. Okay, we're in the business to make money as well as do good at the same time, and this is a key thing that I can't emphasize enough to people within our organization, and you should know as well. And that you look at the pie right here from KGI, and this is just for 10 years. Okay, where's the cost of new equipment? Okay, the cost of new equipment, according to this, is 12% of the total lifetime ownership. Okay. So again, that first cost, what does that really mean versus look at 76%, which is electric. And that's just over 10 years. I don't think most people are buying equipment for 10 years. You're probably buying it for 20 years or longer than that. So again, it's really understanding, why are you making these decisions. So these are some other drivers right here, of course. It's not all about just the first cost. It's about, operation and maintenance. There's a maintenance cost, depending on what type of technology that you have. Reliability. Certain machines and technology is more prone to failures than others. Let's face it, there's certain types of technology that has a lot more moving parts and pieces and more susceptible to things like heat compared to other technologies. So how does that all balance out? Of course, reliability is key. I mean, who We're a continuous operation. Who can afford to, have it 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday night, and all of a sudden your compressed air system's down? Then you're not manufacturing product, and you have a big emergency. So obviously that's a big driver, as well as let's catalog our good and bad experiences. There's a lot to be learned over the years as far as what's worked for us and what hasn't, and we need to catalog that. So again, you drill all that down. Here's some of our main drivers here. We want to standardize. What is the best solution for compressed air systems for us? And if you think about it, it's a lot like other parts of your business. The big thing today is standardizing things. Why do you want to standardize things? Because there's economies of scale. If I'm going to go out to the marketplace and I'm a growing business, which we are, so people that are selling out there, let's talk. But if I'm going to go and buy 20 compressors here in the next 2 years, and I decide that, compressor X is kind of what I want, or this type of technology is what I want, there's some synergies to go out in the marketplace and say, hey, instead of buying a one-off, I'm going to buy 20. So again, there's a lot of different drivers here to go ahead and benchmark and standardize. I don't know, for some reason I saw this quote here. I thought that was pretty good a couple weeks ago. If you fail to prepare, you are preparing to fail. And that's the truth. Okay, Benjamin Franklin, pretty wise guy, but we can probably be reminded of this every other week because it's challenging to do. So how did we get started? How did this thing get going? Really, it started, believe it or not with me, but with our senior management. Okay, they're looking at standardizing things across the globe. Again, because of the economies of scale. Why reinvent the wheel every time that you're going to put a new compressed air system in, or when you're going to go ahead and upgrade an existing compressed air system? They want to standardize. So anyhow, they got a bunch of people together in a working group. We probably had on our first kickoff call 10 people. And we had some worker bees like me and some technical people, and it seemed like we had an awful lot of people with VPs or directors around their name. So if you're familiar with VPs and directors, they're very high level, they're thinking about things, and those are the typical people that are unfortunately focused on first cost. I guess maybe it's good and bad. I mean, they got to be looking at the bottom line. But anyhow, we had a wide variety of perspectives. And so pretty quickly I was like, what's the plan here? And of course VPs, they want to, take over, make the decisions and this and that. So, very quickly we said, okay, listen, we need to divide this group into two. We'll have the working group, which is a nice way of saying, hey, these are the people that really understand compressed air or should understand compressed air. And then the higher up people that are more of the steering committee. And the working group would report to the steering committee. So the other thing too about it is that we generally have business units and regions, so geographical regions. So in North America and South America and Europe and so forth, and we hadn't worked with each other before, believe it or not, to a certain extent. And part of that was too the way the company grew here recently with acquisitions. So we had to get to know each other. And two, some of these people, English is a second language. So, we had to get past some of that and understand how to best work with each other. So, long story short, we set up some working groups on the telephone. Every couple weeks, we had an agenda, and we were working toward that agenda and that plan. We put together what we call this framework to try to start getting a hold of this, and you can see here, we'll go through this quickly, but everything's in the context of 20-year total ownership cost, okay? And the complexity too about it for us is that we have multiple systems in a lot of our plants. We have a high pressure system and a low pressure system. So again, it's just not just one system, but multiple systems in our plants. But anyhow, down at the bottom up here, you can see these are our big bucket areas up here. And we also have some additional items on the next slide. But these are the main categories that we try to break the compressed air system down into to evaluate and discuss and eventually come up with some standardization about. So cooling, reliability, service support, controls. I mean, we could spend hours here talking today about controls, and we could as well on the telephone. Do you go with the OEM, master controls, aftermarket, flow control, you can go on and on and on. And these are the reasons you got to get together and figure this out, because again, There's a lot of different perspectives out there in the marketplace as well as within the company on how to do this. Air quality, again, we've had sessions, for 2 hours to talk about air quality. It's important, What's going to be our standard and how we're going to accomplish that? Are we going to use desiccant dryers? Are we going to use cycling refrigerated dryers? Can we have certain sub-processes that require different air quality and so forth? Condensate management, piping, we're going to use extruded piping in our new construction. Are we going to use carbon steel piping? There's pros and cons to all that, so we got to figure that out. And additional things. Look at all this stuff. The size of your equipment. Each one of our plants typically has about over 2,000 horsepower actually running air compressor and additional installed capacity. So, footprint becomes a deal. If you have a bunch, if you have 10 300 horsepower compressors versus, a few thousand horsepower compressors, that's consideration. But then again, there's other causalities to that type of decision. So you have to balance all this stuff out. And so forth here. So you can see lots of different things that we're trying to figure out, as well as try to capture some things on the demand side. Obviously, we heard a lot about this yesterday, leaks and air assist. Everybody's in the same boat on that. But how can we use less compressed air in our manufacturing operations? What are the lessons learned? We wanted to capture that as well. So one of the things that we did is we got together and we came up with a standardized data collection metric, okay? And we put together all this stuff like make, model, of course, age of equipment, on the compressor, the cooling, the dryer, and we came to agreement on that, and we sent it out and worked obviously very hard to start collecting all that information. And some information is readily available and others not, so we did the best that we could. Also, we collected performance data, okay? Some stuff is an audit, and obviously, as you know, an audit's a snapshot in time. That's the best that you have, that's the best that you have. Some plants have continuous energy and compressed air monitoring, and that's the best. So anyhow, we got all this stuff and brought it all together. So, really what we were after is what's the best way to do compressed air, both existing as well as in the future. And everybody, there was some consensus on some things, and there was some other opinions, we could say, on other things. And you have to try to close those gaps, and identify, what are the biggest gaps. So, for example, we had one region that had an opinion on centrifugal air compressors. That centrifugal air compressors have poor turn down, 15% turn down. And if you know about centrifugal air compressors, you can reach a balance between efficiency and turn down. That's possible where you can still get a pretty good efficiency and have turn down in the 30 or 40%. So that's an example where we had one particular region that had an opinion, a strong opinion on a technology, and because of that, they were not using centrifugal air compressors versus some other regions. So we had to consolidate all that, bring that together, and start educating each other, as well as listening to each other. The other thing I would say with this is obviously you always have opinions, and the thing to concentrate on is this, that data is the best denominator. So, anybody can say, oh, I got a great compressed air system. It works great. I got the lowest total ownership of costs. Well, based on what? Oh, I did an audit 10 years ago, and I got the data right here, and it was 1 week. Come on. So, again, coming up with the data is key. Not only understanding your efficiency of your system and how it operates both under normal conditions as well as upset conditions, or let's say you have a curtailment at a plant, or your line is down for days at a time. How is your compressed air system going to respond to that? As well as maintenance. Depending on the technology that you have, maintenance can be, a significant cost. So we had to take all that in consideration. Whoops. So some conclusions here. I think when we started this journey, the higher ups, to be blunt about it, they were looking for the silver bullet. They wanted a one-way solution that, if we put in a 3-line can plant in the future, you're going to get X, Y, and Z air compressors. And, we don't even need to go out to bid in the future. We'll just go out to bid to the marketplace right now, and we'll know what our unit cost is, and we can figure this all out. And I think reality is that, we can narrow this down, but we're not going to have that silver bullet. It's too complex. You're not going to eliminate, thinking, engineering, and whatnot. So again, I think we can consolidate a lot of our ideas and have consensus on a lot of stuff. But again, we're not going to have a prescriptive fits-all solution. And so I think that was a bit of a wake-up call for the higher-ups. However, that said, there are things that we can standardize a lot closer. Air quality. We had consensus around some technology and controls. A lot of the big items that you saw up there, we had quite a bit of consensus around. As well as I think we understood that we have some gaps that we need to continue to work on in the future. An example is heat recovery. We have heat recovery at plants. Some plants do it better than others. Why are we not killing it at all of our plants? So again, it helped us identify some gaps. Again, there's some takeaway lessons. You can read those. We're giving our best shot today. This is something that's probably not, do it and then we're good for the next 10 years. So it's something that's going to have to be visited periodically and updated depending on our experience and technology out there. Certainly the relationships were important. And the good thing about those relationships that we had across the different regions, I think we've laid a platform to go after other technologies, and that certainly is the plan. So for example, after we finish with compressed air, get that signed, sealed, and delivered, we're going to go after vacuum. And then after that, we're going to go after cooling systems and other topics. So again, we have a working group. We kind of have a protocol on how to do this, and we're looking at standardizing things in the future as well. Some other details. Let's just say we have this standardization. What's going to happen if, I always ask this question, if we get a rogue guy at the plant that decides, well, I like vendor X and I'm just going to do my own thing. So there's still some outstanding questions as far as governance and how strict are we going to adhere to this standard. So I'm not saying we've figured it out by any means, but we're trying to bring it together and figure out our gaps as well as standardize at the same time. So that's it. So thank you very much, and remember, vanity of vanities, all is vanity.